Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. We're your hosts, Calvin Timms and Dale Terry. You can find us over on X Twitter at TDC_Calvin and at Dynasty_Dale. You can find the Dynasty After Dark channel on X at FF After Dark. You can also find us on YouTube, Spotify, Google, all the places podcasts are found at the Dynasty After Dark podcast. And if you can, while you're over there, please like, comment, subscribe to the video. Helps us out with the algorithm that we don't really understand how it works, but we appreciate you guys. We're trying to grow all off season, and you guys have been very key in helping us grow, and we do truly appreciate that. You're trying to help us grow, and we're trying to help you win. So it seems like a beneficial relationship we've got going on here. But today we're back, and we're going to be talking through a couple more of these rookies. We're going to be going through the pass catchers. If you haven't, go check out yesterday. We talked about the quarterbacks and the running backs. And, as we were going through the preseason, there are so many people playing, and there's so much news and on all the players, right? Oh, Cooper Kupp's out there, and he just torched a DB, or, Justin Jefferson's at it again, or all this different news. But the one thing that doesn't get covered enough, in my opinion, right in this time, is the rookies. And that's why we're kind of coming out with this recap and talking about all these rookies that have been able to establish themselves in training camps and these preseason games, and really give our thoughts on that. So before we get into that, Dale, how are we doing today?
Hey, I'm doing really good. I'm just enjoying it's the preseason, and I'm just ready for football and ready to get at it, and I really just can't wait.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's definitely a good time right now, and you'll love to see it. I think it's going to be fun here in just a couple weeks when we actually get football, but just a couple more weeks to wait. So to fill that time, we might as well talk about some of these rookie receivers. So How about we do that? So let's start with and we're going to be going off our final rookie rankings from a couple months ago. Now, that said, we are going to re-release these rankings and kind of update them a little bit with a preseason final rookie ranking, because some of these guys have really shifted with injuries or other signings or things like that. So we want to give you guys our final rankings and what we really feel on all these players: quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, all of them. So that said, we're going to talk about Jaxon, who was our number one before. I think he's still our number one. Dude's just a baller. Through two games, in week number 1, 3 for 25, 3 catches for 25 yards. Now, you never know who exactly he's playing against, whether it's the 1s, 2s, 3s, whatever, but week number 2, he also had 3 catches on 3 targets for 58 yards. He absolutely torched a guy on one of those, and he got shoestring tackled like an inch away from a touchdown, which would have just completely changed the narrative on him. He would have been, he's the best player of all time because he scored a touchdown in a preseason game. But, Jaxon, we're still feeling good, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. With the play he had in against the Cowboys, it's this last weekend was amazing, and he's just showing the skills that he has. I know he's not the burner that we necessarily want to see, but he's a guy that is able to catch. He doesn't need to be. He's able to catch the ball in traffic. He's not really afraid of contact,
right?
And and he's able to go and get it, and that's what we love to see.
Yeah, and he's got that Patrick Mahomes thing where he didn't have the fastest 40, but he just so happens to always be a little bit faster than that cornerback chasing him down, right? So that's all that seems to matter for these young guys. So he's still a stud. I think that he's probably being devalued a little bit in terms of what he's going to be able to ultimately do for you. I think this time next year he's going to be a top 5 dynasty wide receiver personally. Just where I think
agree.
His trajectory is headed. So, I think he's going to be a very good player. Go buy while you still can. Top 10 is definitely within the realm of possibilities after this season. Now,
100%.
the number 2 guy that you weren't so hot on, but I was very high on, and I'm still very high on, and I still love personally. But week 1, Quentin Johnston, 3 of 6 targets, 3 catches for 10 yards and a touchdown. They used him a lot in the goal line in that game, so everyone's going to say, oh, he only had 10 yards. But, I mean, when you catch a 2-yard touchdown, like, what do you want from the guy? It's okay.
Yeah.
But Quentin Johnston, he struggled with drops. He had that big drop in week 1. He had 2 drops, I think, actually, in week 1. But it's always so confusing to me because drops matter sometimes. If we don't like the player, they matter. But if we do like the player, then drops don't matter. So, it's very confusing. I have never been able to really track that one, I guess. Drops, I guess, sometimes matter, I guess, is the catchphrase there. But in week 2, he fixed that drop rate. He had 3 catches on 3 targets for 37 yards, was utilized a lot more down the field. And he's still a good player. He's still going to be a stud this year, in my opinion. What are your thoughts so far through camp?
Yeah, I do think QJ is going to be good. I just like other plays better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they have I think he could be the best TCU receiver we've seen drafted, which that's not that's not saying a whole lot because
it's not a great track record.
Yeah, it is not a great track record, but I will say that he is better than those guys and more talented,
mm-hmm.
and has more tools in his arsenal. So I think he can still be good. Like, he was my wide receiver 3. I still believe in him, and I think he's going to do well. I think it's going to take a little bit, and it does help he has Justin Herbert to catch balls from, and
it's going to help.
I think that's going to that's going to help a lot.
Yep.
And I think that bumps him up a little bit for some of the other guys.
Yeah, I think that he's going to be very good. And, once we see, he's only caught passes so far from Easton Stick. Once Justin Herbert's out there throwing the ball, it's going to be a little bit different. And one last little piece of nugget news on Quentin Johnston. I've heard that they're actually moving him all over in camp at different positions. Like, they're playing him in the slot, they're playing him at X, they're playing him in the move role as well. So, they're just moving him all over the field. And they say that, it's expected that he's going to take a little bit more time to acclimate to the NFL just because he's being, experimented with in multiple different roles. So, just take that into account when you're looking at it. But the other guy that I think is going to be utilized in multiple different ways is going to be the number 3 guy on our list, Jordan Addison. I know you were higher on him. Week number 1, Jordan Addison had 1 catch for 22 yards. He started the offseason a little rough, had the whole speeding while going really fast incident.
Really fast. Yes.
Didn't learn from Henry Ruggs, but luckily it was not a tragedy like the Henry Ruggs situation was. And I think he did kind of get the message from it after that. So hopefully he's going to learn his lesson from that. Other than that, very positive camp news so far. Little bit of usage in the preseason game. They're kind of saving him, it feels like, but he's going to be someone who I think is going to ball out. He doesn't have Justin Herbert, but I think Kirk Cousins is going to be just fine for throwing him the ball. What are your thoughts on Addison?
Yeah, I really like Addison. I saw a tweet from somebody saying that Addison has the potential to not outscore KJ Osborne this year. And have similar fantasy points, and I don't think there's any way that that's going to be possible because there's so many vacated targets.
Yeah,
and I just see Addison taking the vast majority of those.
I agree,
and just absorbing all those. I can see him having I can see him potentially having like a 80 catch year, 1,100 yards. A handful of touchdowns, probably like 4 or 5 touchdowns. I can see him having a very, very relevant year, and and be a decent wide receiver too. And I'm really excited for him. I think he's going to be great, and I think it helps that the Vikings defense is trash, and they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. So
yep, I'm with you 100% there.
I'm really excited about it.
100%. Now, he's still top 3 for both of us, I think, at this point in time. I think there's a pretty sizable tier gap between him and the next couple guys here. Now, my number 4 and your number 4 are a little different. I still have Marvin Mims as my number 4. I know that you have Zay Flowers. We'll talk about these guys kind of back to back here. Now, week number 1, Marvin Mims didn't get a target, so there's not really much to talk about there. This last week, he had 2 targets, 1 catch, 8 yards. Now, I have heard good things out of him from camp. I've heard a lot more better news about Courtland Sutton, so maybe that's going to deter Marvin Mims a little bit this upcoming season. But I think with the Tim Patrick, Fireball Jones, the fantasy footballers got that in my brain, man. But Tim Patrick, the little shout out there to the ballers. They're pretty awesome to listen to, so go check their podcast out too. But Tim Patrick, the ACL injury or Achilles injury, I can't remember which one it was. See, it's basically a career ender at this point in time. That makes Marvin Mims the number 3 guy, and I think that if they're going to start lining him up deep, it's going to be fun to watch, in my opinion. I think he still has a massive opportunity this upcoming season, but on the flip side, your guy, Zay Flowers, also has a very high opportunity, and he's someone who's also been balling out in camp. People are comparing him to Antonio Brown. Now, that seems a little bit crazy in my opinion, but
I agree. And I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 this year for the Ravens, and I think they're going to pass a lot more. I see him being the slot guy, and I think they're going to run a lot more. I don't think they're going to run a lot of heavy sets like they have in years past.
I agree.
And I actually heard a stat from the Ballers that Mark Andrews, I think all last year, on pass blocking plays, I think
blocked 3 times or whatever.
Yeah, it was I think it was maybe 9 times during the whole year or something crazy. And Waller was less, which I thought was funny too.
Yeah.
So, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in this offense, and I really expect Zay Flowers to take advantage of it.
Yep.
And I feel the tier is getting closer, in my opinion. I really want, I love Zay Flowers. I really want to move him up. I really want to move him up. But I do see a lot more from these other guys that maybe Zay Flowers may be lacking, but I really think Zay Flowers is going to be that guy. I kind of feel he's like the Tajay Spears of the wide receivers. That he just has
very
that
explosive,
dog in him.
Very
he's
explosive.
very explosive. He's very explosive. Is a good player. I don't know the guy. He's probably a fantastic teammate. I don't know. But,
or he's a terrible person, Dale. He might be a terrible person.
He may be.
He's a receiver, so he probably has a little bit of diva in him. I'm just going to guess.
I don't care what he has. I think he's great, and I'm fine with whatever's going on there.
The only downside with Zay Flowers is his size. He's a little bit smaller, but also Lamar Jackson, we don't know if he can sustain multiple weapons through the air. I just don't know if the slot guy can be extremely relevant with Lamar Jackson. It's entirely possible, but it's a couple of different factors that lean against Zay Flowers. We also haven't seen him with Rashad Bateman. Bateman is finally getting healthy, and they're ramping him up and everything like that. So, I think that there's some potential there, but yeah, I think it's a little concerning that we just don't. That's my only downside with Zay Flowers. I like the player. I just like some of these other guys more because there's less question marks. Now, I can see the argument where you can say take him over Marvin Mims, but I still really like Marvin Mims, especially with Sean Payton, handpicked. It's hard to turn down personally. So these 2 guys, I think they're back to back, and still they were back to back months ago, and I think that they're still back to back. So I can kind of see that argument at this point. But yeah, your argument is going to be Zay over Mims, and I can totally see that. So
it is, and again, like we talked in the running back segment a couple days ago, that I feel these guys are like I don't want to say 1A, 1B, but they're 4A, 4B.
Right.
I feel these guys are so interchangeable in in rankings that it's just splitting hairs.
And this is the benefits of doing it in tiers, right? Because essentially 100%. by doing that, right? And I know that people have preferences in tiers. Obviously we have JSN, Quentin Johnston, and Jordan Addison in one tier. every time out of every time. So maybe JSN should be his own tier, but it's kind of silly, right? Like, I'm still okay with any of those three. If you had to give me one, I would take JSN, right? And then I'd take Quentin Johnston, and then I'd take Jordan Addison. But I'm okay with any of those three. Same with Zay Flowers and Marvin Mims. They're in a tier. I would take Marvin Mims over Zay Flowers, but I'm okay with either one of these guys because I see the tier break between these two guys, who I'm okay with either one, and the next guy, Jonathan Mingo, who we had before, is pretty substantial, and I'm still kind of leaning into that. Jonathan Mingo, so far, he hasn't really done a ton in camp. There's not a lot of amazing reports. He's not tearing it up. Bryce Young has been hit or miss in camp so far. I guess the running game's kind of struggling. The offensive line's getting destroyed. It's just not a great situation down there, and I think that it's a little concerning if I'm a Panthers fan personally, but Jonathan Mingo has one catch for 15 yards. I still think he has a lot of potential. He was a second-round pick with Frank Reich in this offense. I just think that it's going to take a little bit more time than people expect on Jonathan Mingo. Do you see it kind of that way as well?
It will, and I kind of feel the whole Panther offense as a whole is just kind of a wait-and-see approach. I think he has the potential, but I would much rather have a lot of these guys, and there's going to be a couple guys that we talk about later that I would probably rather have than Jonathan Mingo.
Yeah, and again, this is a little bit of a tier here, but before we had Jonathan Mingo, Josh Downs, and Cedric Tillman all in one tier, and personally, I'd be more interested in Cedric Tillman at this point in time than and maybe that puts Jonathan Mingo down a tier. But again, we need to see some actual gameplay from Mingo before I want to dock him too hard. The guys in front of him, you've got Adam Thielen, he's just old. He can't stay fully healthy anymore. And then you've also got DJ Chark, who I love personally, but he also cannot stay healthy. So it's very possible that I don't want to dock Jonathan Mingo too much because his potential play time is massive. He could be easily the number one on this offense in 2 months' time, right? So don't want to knock him too much. Just haven't heard much on him, and that's kind of a concern when you hear about all these guys and all you do is hype up the rookies, right? Essentially, we nailed every draft pick that we've ever drafted, right? So when you're not talking about Jonathan Mingo, that's a little bit more concerning.
It is. And, I think I would rather have, like, for instance, like the Rashee Rices of the world.
Yeah, he's rising.
He's definitely rising, and I think he's a name to keep in mind because of the lack of stars in that wide receiver room. I think Rice could be really interesting, and he could be Mahomes' favorite, who, honestly, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, it's still going to be Kelce, but
obviously, and that's where. We'll talk on Rashee Rice here in just 1 minute. Let's talk about a couple other guys we had in this tier. So Josh Downs, so far, he's been low key. Like, again, just like really Jonathan Mingo, I haven't heard a ton. People they are big fans of Josh Downs down in Indianapolis, right? And they're very high on him, but I have not heard he hasn't gotten a lot of buzz on social media or anything like that. But through 2 games, in week 1, 2 catches on 2 targets for 29 yards. In week number 2 against the Bears, he had 2 catches on 3 targets for 20 yards. So, 4 catches for 49 yards on 5 targets. That's not bad, man. Like, he's been low key very good. And this has been a lot with Gardner Minshew and Sam Ehlinger. So we'll see what he can actually do with Anthony Richardson. Now that's where I'm a little bit more concerned, I guess. Richardson, he's got a little bit of he's going to be a rookie and he's the starter week 1, so it's a little concerning in terms of where his accuracy is going to be at, but I do like Anthony Richardson being the starter early to get that game time reps and development and everything like that. So we'll see how that relationship kind of pairs up, but these two coming in together, it should be a good sign for Josh Downs that they're going to be able to develop together at the same time, right?
100%, yes.
The other guy in this tier, who I still have in this tier and I'm very happy with personally, is going to be Cedric Tillman, who has been showing some very good flashes so far. He's been targeted pretty heavily when he's out there, and he's running a few routes with some of the starters and everything like that, but, so far through 3 games, because they had the Hall of Fame game as well. But if I do some quick math with all the swapping of the positions, right, he has 10 targets already, which is crazy. Like, they are really trying to get this guy ramped up. Now, I know that they don't have Elijah Moore playing, or Amari Cooper, or Donovan Peoples-Jones, really. None of these guys are really getting a ton of playtime right now, but man, I could easily see Cedric Tillman passing up DPJ this upcoming season.
Right.
I was a little bit more down on that possibility, but how he's playing so far in the preseason, it's becoming a lot more likely, in my opinion. How do you see this developing?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I'm really excited to see what Tillman can do. I think he's going to he has the potential to supplant himself as a wide receiver too. It's gonna be interesting to see what what Elijah Moore does, for instance.
Yep.
But I think Tillman can really be the guy, and especially with like Amari Cooper's contract is going to expire here,
right? And Donovan Peoples-Jones is a free agent next year. So
yeah, is going to be a free agent next year, and I don't want Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's talent. He's a very talented guy. He just hasn't shown his potential, and I think Tillman has already outshone him in a year where Donovan Peoples-Jones has had a couple years in that offense and hasn't really been it.
Right. Yep. So a little bit of something to watch there with Cedric Tillman. Now, you wanted to talk Rashee Rice, so we can talk about him quickly. He is another guy that's getting just absolutely peppered with targets. The only problem with Rashee Rice is, we haven't seen a ton of Patrick Mahomes. He had 15 attempts this last game, and he played a lot with Rashee Rice. But last week, Rashee Rice had 9 targets, man. 9 targets. That's crazy. The problem is, or my fear, I guess, for Rashee Rice is, it's Travis Kelce, and then I feel like they're going to rotate the next player. Like, I don't think they have a set game plan. Like, maybe Rashee Rice can be that guy, but I'm just a little leery, and maybe that's gonna bite me in the butt, but I'm just a little nervous that ever since Tyreek, man, they have not had a go-to wide receiver, and
it's the problem I see is that they just don't have another star there.
Yeah, and maybe Rashee Rice can be that guy though.
Yeah, he could be that guy, but I kind of think he might take over some of the Juju targets, of last year, and can kind of be the outside guy.
Yeah.
And which I think can be very valuable, but I think my concern is that Rice has a very limited route tree, and when he played at SMU, it was a lot of screens or a lot of 9 routes, and it just wasn't a lot of technical routes, which isn't going to be bad, honestly, because I'm sure there was a lot of scrambling involved, at SMU, and a lot of just high football IQ plays.
Sure.
That he can hopefully do with Patrick Mahomes.
Right. And that's, if anybody's going to be able to scheme him open, it's going to be Andy Reid, right? So
absolutely.
one of the best offensive minds we have in the game right now. So
yes.
I'm fully willing to admit that I could be wrong on Rashee Rice, and I was maybe ranking him a little bit too low, but man, he's been killing it so far, and the camp highlights and news around him in camp has also been just nonstop positive buzz. So he's really rising up my board pretty heavily. I could see him being in a tier. Maybe he can even jump up to the Marvin Mims, Zay Flowers tier. To be honest, I just think that he has such high potential, man. It's crazy. So we'll see where he lands on the final rookie rankings here in just a couple weeks. But yeah, someone to definitely keep in mind. He was someone that was going in the 3rd round in a lot of rookie drafts. He kind of
a lot, yeah.
He kind of spiked a little bit into the 2nd for some of them, but yeah, he was a cheap player, and you could be getting a massive steal.
Absolutely. Yes.
Jalen Hyatt was another guy that I was a little bit higher on after the actual draft, and he has been okay so far through camp. I think the biggest thing is he's showing a little bit more of a route tree, and that was your number one concern, right? Was he was 100%. A deep threat, and it's Tennessee's offense. It's just a gimmicky kind of thing. This last week against the Panthers, he had the touchdown that could have been any wide receiver, but it wasn't any wide receiver. It was Jalen Hyatt.
It was Jalen Hyatt. Yeah.
He's so fast, man. He's
very fast. So yeah, I think again with him, it's a wait and see because like we don't know how many of those 15 wide receivers they have on that on that roster is going to actually
make it on the team. Cut down day is coming. Let's go.
It is coming, and it's coming fast for a lot of those guys, unfortunately. So, I don't want him in. I don't want Hyatt in Dynasty. I want him in best ball if I want him anywhere.
Sure.
That's the only place I want him because I know he can make those game-breaking plays.
Yeah, and that's where we'll just have to kind of watch and see, right? Because they have so many guys here, first off. But Jalen Hyatt's a rookie, so there's going to be some learning curve, growing pains and things like that. But he has the ability to really set himself up long-term with Daniel Jones. Like, he has the ability to establish himself. The Giants have needed a number one wide receiver since Odell left, right? And I think that he has that potential. Now, can he do it? I don't know, but he has the opportunity. So he just needs to seize it this year and kind of establish that. So we'll see what he can do. Just like you said, wait and see. There's a few guys. There's going to be 4 guys we want to kind of just briefly mention. There's so many wide receivers, but really quickly, these 4 guys are all kind of in the same tier. Michael Wilson with the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of people are hyping him up. He's been looking really good in camp so far. Kayshon Boutte, he's been playing a lot better. He struggled a lot through the early part of training camp, but he's starting to finally turn it around a little bit, and I think he's starting to get a little bit more, get his head focused, and if he can play up to his potential, man, my Patriots got a steal in the 6th round. So something to watch with Kayshon Boutte. If he can put it together, the dude is going to be very good at football. I can promise you that much. You wanted to talk about quickly, who was it? Trey Palmer?
It's Trey Palmer for the Bucs. Like they do have Mike Evans there, who's probably going to have another 1,000-yard season, and then they also have Chris Godwin. But with those guys getting older, like they're going to have expiring contracts here soon. I think he's someone to monitor, and especially with the Russell Gage injury, which I think is going to be career-ending.
That's going to be huge. Yeah,
it's going to be huge. So I think he's going to have a massive opportunity to be the wide receiver 3, and I really think he's going to take it. I don't think there's a lot there. But I don't think he's going to have a lot of value this year because
too many guys in front of him, right?
There's too many guys in front of him. There's Rachaad White and then there's Baker Mayfield / Kyle Trask
and Cade Otton
the ball and Cade Otton there. So I think there's a lot of guys there, and plus they're gonna have a lot of poor quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's just someone to monitor and maybe like and maybe put on your taxi squad potentially. Or and stuff like that.
He was a 5th round it's a pretty rookie deep pick, so he was a 5th round pick, so he's someone that you can get fairly cheap if you want to take a stab on him. The other guy that I want to mention here, and this is the last guy before we jump over to the tight end position, but A.T. Perry with the New Orleans Saints has been balling out, man. Like, it's crazy, and I wanted to pull up his stats really quickly. If I can, give me 1 second while I pull him up really quickly. But he has been the New Orleans Saints have a massive hole at wide receiver, right? They've been waiting for someone. People are very high on Chris Olave because there's not really a ton of people here to compete with for that number one spot, right? Because Michael Thomas hasn't been able to stay healthy, and they have not had a guy for years, right? But in week number 1, A.T. Perry had 6 targets, 6 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. Like, he was very good. He has this last week, just yesterday, he had where'd it go? Oh, no, I lost. Oh, here it is. He actually had 5 targets, another 5 targets. So they are targeting the hell out of A.T. Perry right now. 3 catches for 22 yards. Like, he's getting utilized on the outside, down the field a little bit more. And just the amazing potential that this guy has is crazy, in my opinion. So just a name that I wanted to throw out there to keep in mind. But yeah, A.T. Perry, he was undrafted in a lot of leagues, so.
Yeah, and I really think A.T. Perry can be someone that is going to probably be the wide receiver 3 and could be the wide receiver 2 on that team next year if they do get rid of Mike Thomas, or they might just just keep kicking the bucket with him. Who knows?
Right. But, for sure.
But I think he's someone is interesting. Someone else who's who might be on our radar, but probably hasn't been until late is I think it's Puka
Nacua.
Thank you. And it's for the Rams, and I think he has the potential to be the wide receiver 2 in that offense.
Maybe.
I don't know how much that's worth in a potentially horrific Rams team, but I think it's gonna be really interesting to see what he does, because he's really been a preseason darling so far.
Yeah. I still think Van Jefferson's going to come back pretty strong, but he is a name to keep in mind for sure. So, all right, let's jump over to the tight end position here. We'll kind of give some brief thoughts on these guys. Now, going into the post-draft rankings, right? We still had Mike Mayer as our number 1 guy. He has not gotten a target. He did not get a target in week 1. This last week, he also did not get a target. He had 1 target or 1 catch for 3 yards on 2 targets. So hasn't played a ton. He played a little bit with Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo only had 4 targets. So, I think that they're slow playing Michael Mayer a little bit here, but he does have a decent potential this upcoming season. But to be honest with you, if I'm taking any of the 3 guys, we had them all in one tier. We just got done railing about tiers, right? He's probably the number 3 guy I'm taking in this tier at this point in time. I do think that he's going to have a little bit of a curve in terms of production. I would not be surprised if he ends up as the number 1 guy in 2 years' time. But I think that for this year specifically, the other 2 guys I think are going to more than overcome that, where, in 2 years' time, the difference isn't going to be drastic enough to overcome this 1 year, if that makes sense. So
it does. Yeah.
I love Michael Mayer still, and we'll see what he can actually do when the starters are all out there. But yeah, I'm just a little nervous about this passing game in general and his potential usage in it as well. Any thoughts on Mayer?
Yeah, I really like the landing spot, because I think he's going to take over. He's probably going to take over all of Darren Waller and Foster Moreau's targets of last year. And I think Josh McDaniel has used the tight end pretty well historically, and I think Michael Mayer is going to be that guy. But I do understand the dip because of Sam Laporta, in his potential value with really being potentially the 3rd best pass catching option on that offense, and with Dalton Kincaid, which he's going to be the wide receiver 2 in that offense. So, I get it. Like, there are potentially better plays than Michael Mayer right now.
Yep. And I guess one of those players would be the guy that everyone is taking number 1 overall out of these 3 guys. And we'll talk about it here in just a minute, but Dalton Kincaid, he finally got usage a little bit this last week. He did not play in week number 1. Neither did Josh Allen, to be fair, but they utilized this last week to play the starters a little bit more. Now, I did go back and look actual play-by-play because Dalton Kincaid had 4 targets in this game. Only one of them came from Josh Allen. So I do think that's a little bit of a relevant piece of information when you're looking at that, but he was very good. He had 3 catches for 45 yards this last week, and it looked like they were starting to establish him. All the training camp reports are he's worth that first round pick. They're using him all over the field. There's a lot of reports that they're going to go heavy sets, 2 tight ends, with him being the guy that's going to be going out for more passes, while Dawson Knox is going to be more of the blocking 6th lineman type of guy. So I do think that Dalton Kincaid has a very high opportunity this year. I don't think it's going to be as high as a lot of people think, but people are very, very high on Dalton Kincaid, and I have to admit that I might be wrong on this guy, that I might be, a little... He's still my number 2 guy. That has not changed. What really has changed for me is Sam Laporta has gone to my number 1, and we'll talk about him in just 1 second. But, I'm just basically flip-flopping Michael Mayer and Sam Laporta and keeping Dalton Kincaid as my number 2. But I think opportunity cost as well kind of plays into that. When you have to give a first-round pick for Dalton Kincaid and you can get Sam Laporta in round 2, and I think that they're going to have similar, or Laporta's going to have better production in year 1, that's where it kind of sways me a little bit personally. But what are your thoughts so far on Kincaid?
Yeah, I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be a highly targeted weapon in that offense, and I really, that's what we've been needing in Buffalo, because all the Diggs rumors of
right.
this week, which in my opinion have gotten out of control.
Yes.
But I think he's going to be of the guys that are in that tier. I think he's the one to own because he has the best quarterback.
Man, the Jared Goff slander coming from you right now is unbearable, Dale. Unbearable.
I do like Jared Goff, and he would be the second best quarterback, but I'm just not. I just feel
you're just
that
a hater. It's all right.
I just think we're giving way too much hype for the Lions, and we haven't seen it yet.
That's fair, but really quickly, we'll go over to the Lions here, and yeah, so Dalton Kincaid, he's going to be a good player. I think his opportunities are going to be high. I don't think they're going to be as high as people expect, but I think it's going to be good for a rookie for sure. So that's my final thought on Dalton Kincaid. We'll go over to Sam Laporta and why I love him here really quickly before we wrap this podcast up. Sam Laporta has not played at all in the preseason. Who else hasn't played? Most of the starters for this team, Dave Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff, they have not played a single snap so far in the preseason. And Sam Laporta has gotten nonstop. Dalton Kincaid has gotten good reports. Sam Laporta has gotten nonstop Tank Bigsby level of reports. This guy is so much better than we even expected. Oh, he's so good. He's so good. He can use him anywhere. The reason why I love Sam Laporta, massive holes on the weapons, right? They've got Jahmyr Gibbs, who is a good pass catcher. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. They hopefully have Jameson Williams when he comes back. But as of right now, they've got 2 guys that, in terms of guaranteed targets, I could really see Sam Laporta slotting in early as either the number 2 or even number 3 guy in terms of targets. We know that Jared Goff likes to target the tight end position. We saw it for years with TJ Hawkinson and his years in the Rams as well. And Dan Campbell is a former NFL tight end, and he took this guy in round 2. You think that he's not going to try and make this guy shine? He's going to make this guy have the best career possible that he can possibly have because he wants to see this guy be good. Sam Laporta was rising on most people's boards at the end end of the draft cycle anyway. I think that Sam Laporta's got so much opportunity, and the gap between him and Dalton Kincaid skill-wise is not that massive. We're talking about, an end of the first round pick versus the first or second pick in the second round for Sam Laporta. So it's not that big of a gap in terms of draft position. I don't care about that round 1 versus round 2. So that's why I like Sam Laporta. You can give me 30 seconds here on why you're out on him, I guess, compared to Kincaid.
Well, I like Sam Laporta, but I just feel Kincaid has the better opportunity.
Fair.
I think there's going to be more passing volume. I do expect there to be more passing touchdowns in Detroit, but I just think we're overhyping the Lions right now, and
impossible.
That's the biggest worry to me is that we're just anointing a team already that hasn't done anything yet.
Yeah,
and that's scary to me. Compared to what we've seen in Buffalo, it's what we've seen in Buffalo, and we've seen them do it. And yes, we haven't seen a relevant second pass catcher, but
right.
I think that's going to happen with King. And
it's a fair argument. It's a fair argument for sure.
So I think that's going to be the thing. And I think he's the second best option in that offense compared to the Lions, where they have Amon-Ra, they have Gibbs, they have J-Mo if he ever gets it right. Like they have other guys there other than Sam Laporta. And
fair.
And I understand the Lions. That's the Lions love that everyone's giving, but I think we just need to slow our roll a little bit.
Yeah, but all right, and host privileges here. I'll take the last word on the line.
Yep, absolutely.
You can't do anything until you're given the opportunity, right? So we'll see this year. So they will they'll either live up to it or they won't. So we'll see this year. But that is our thoughts on the rookie pass catchers. We're going to be updating these again next week. We're going to be talking through some of these guys again next week. It's been a while since we've talked about these rookies, so it took a little bit longer here just because we had so much more we had to get to with some of these guys. But there are a lot of good pass catchers. This rookie class, I think, is one of the better ones. I know it was kind of downplayed a little bit, but there were a lot of guys that I think have some sneaky high potential. So that's our thoughts here. Dale, any last thoughts before we get out of here?
Nope.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, you can find us over on X Twitter at TDC_Calvin, at Dynasty_Dale. You can find the Dynasty After Dark podcast at FF After Dark. And then you can find us over on YouTube, Spotify, Google, all those things. Again, if you can, really quickly, 5 seconds, go and leave a hey, what's up, or any Dynasty question you guys might have. Yeah. Thumbs up, like the video, whatever it is, subscribe. We appreciate it. We are trying to grow, and we can't do it without you guys. So thank you guys so much for that. Until next time, thank you guys so much for listening. Have a good night.